So the whole issue of coal mining is more an issue related to energy security in this country, you will agree, and energy is totally linked with growth and development in this country. If you look at the current energy scenario in this country, renewables have a very small share. Coal is supposed to be the cheapest source of energy today. Why is coal cheap? The reason why coal is cheap source of energy is, there is a reason for that. Highly subsidized. You get land at throwaway prices to establish mines and thermal power plants in this country. There is no cost whatsoever for there's no social cost, for example. What is the cost of displacement that you pay to these people? What is the cost for the loss of the ecological balance of that region? What is the cost of loss of environment? Those people out there, they've got, like in any country, if a church is brought down, a temple is brought down, there's a war, right? The forests which are mined have, the tribals have spiritual, they're very spiritually connected to those forests. You destroy all their gods, their beliefs, their faith, their spiritual connect. What is the cost that you pay to them for that? You don't pay. So because you don't take in a lot of factors, coal becomes a cheap source of energy. So it becomes the easiest way. So you want 60% of your energy is produced from coal. Now coal is a finite resource. Okay, forget what Greenpeace is saying, but coal is something that will finish on earth. You agree with that, right? It's a fossil fuel that will ultimately finish. It won't be there indefinitely for you to produce energy with. Coal pollutes. You'll definitely agree that there are carbon emissions which cause global warming, which in turn causes climate change. The other angle to this whole energy insecurity, the problem in India is that the energy issue in India is not, the energy insecurity in this country is not because there is no energy. If you look at transmission in India, when energy is produced, it's uploaded to the centralized grid and then it's distributed. Okay, in this whole process of uploading it to the centralized grid and distributing it, you lose a lot of energy. So the average loss of energy in this country by transmission and distribution loss is 42%, whereas the world best practice average is 5%. So it's like a bucket which has got lots of holes. You keep pouring water into this, the water is going, but you will not plug the holes. You want to continuously pour water into it, say we need more water, we need water. Okay, so energy in India from coal is produced. You look at, they don't want to work on efficiency. You don't want to work on transmission and distribution loss. You don't want to work on efficiency from mining. Like there's data which shows that efficiency at all levels from mining, there's n amount of coal that's lying at the pothole to be taken and used, which is not used. From there to in production inefficiency to the end user. Look at inefficiency in cities, So we don't work on energy efficiency. We don't want to work on energy efficiency. So the whole issue is not that we don't have energy. The issue of energy is linked to inequity, because whatever energy is produced is siphoned off to the nearby cities and industries. That's what is prioritized as against the villages. Because if you look at the whole thing, Singrauli has 11 mines and 9 thermal power plants. Then Mahan should have energy because it produces 10% of the total coal based energy of the country, but Mahan villages don't have energy. Though there is it produces 10%. I live in Delhi, I have 24 hours energy. But the people in Mahan who've given up their land, or in Singrauli who've given up their land, don't have access to energy. It's strange, right? So the whole issue is inequity in distribution. This way we'll keep producing more energy, destroying more livelihoods, and we'll keep siphoning it off to industry and cities. And we'll continue to say that 1 out of every 2 Indians don't have access to energy, so we want more mines, we want more thermal power plants. So this whole debate, is much more, the whole development debate is linked to the energy debate. We don't want to invest in renewables. For example, I want to talk about another village in Bihar, which is called Dharnai. This village was, there was no electricity for 30 years in that village. And Greenpeace has established a decentralized renewable energy model there, which tries to show that if you are talking about giving energy access to poor in this country, in rural areas, then maybe this model is flawed. this model of producing energy, uploading it to the centralized grid and then distributing is flawed. Maybe the way forward could be, producing energy in a cluster of say 50 villages and distributing it there itself. Because that's where energy insecurity is, right? Development, whose development? Development is for those regions also, right? Development, you'll definitely agree that, Mahan has a right to develop as much as Delhi. So, there needs to be schools, there need to be health facilities, there needs to be roads, everything. So the whole thing is, how do we define development, and is development taking away resources from people? Will ultimately taking away resources, snatching away resources and bringing them, making them migrant laborers. We keep seeing kids, on the road selling flowers. We keep seeing a lot of people, sleeping under the, flyovers in Delhi, right? How did they reach there? A lot of people who do domestic work in Delhi, they were once landholders in their villages. For some reason, they didn't have land, or their land was taken away or whatever. What happens when people get displaced? Their resource or their source of income. Somebody who's never gone to school. See, again, the whole thing is, we talk about mainstreaming people, right? What job will a coal, a thermal power plant or a coal mining company give to somebody who's never been to school? Manual labor? Because mine needs mine engineers, supervisors, all those people who are technically qualified, who are educated. By those standards, the people of Mahan are not, right? So if they give their land, they never get jobs in return. We filed RTI, we've seen that not even 10% of the people who were promised jobs, historically, for the past 30 years, have been given jobs there. So whose development are we talking about, and what form of development? Is development taking away resources? Then there is this larger issue of how we perceive development, because I remember Dayamani Barla, who works in the Jharkhand belt, and she's a very forceful lady, a very strong fighter on the ground. When somebody asked her a question of development, she just stood up and she said that, can you eat coins? No, you need food, and food is produced on agricultural land, food is produced in the forests, we need water. So these resources will ultimately help us stay alive and develop. So how are we saying that destroying agricultural land in this country, destroying forests in this country, destroying water sources in this country are going to help us develop? How? Because ultimately, we talk about the food security bill, we talk about prices of, essential commodities rising, but then why is it rising? When the agricultural land will shrink, obviously in whatever little you produce, you will sell it at a higher cost. That's economics. Then why do we protest against it? So when we talk about development, development is having nutritional food, development is having health care, development is having a good education facility in your, development is not displacement, development is not losing your resources, development is not being chucked out of your homes. I don't know whether I've answered questions or I've raised more questions, but the whole development itself, is as a concept is very debatable, because if development was so easy, if industries come in and it will generate development, it would have been very easy. It would have actually been very easy. And Singrauli for me would have been one of the most developed regions of the country with so much industry there. So development is really not what we understand. And whose development? Are we talking about Tata's development, Jindal's development, Reliance's development, so that they can make more money and invest in another mine, and then make more money and invest in another industry? And when we talk about development, we talk about the GDP growth of this country, right? We say 1% GDP growth is huge development. But why don't we talk about the human development index of this country, which is abysmal, which is pathetic? Where do we stand on maternal mortality? Where do we stand on, female feticide? Where do we stand on, malnutrition in this country? Isn't development having good health, having good nutritional food? Isn't development mothers not dying during their delivery? Isn't development, girls not being killed because they are girls? So the whole thing of, development itself is something that we need to understand. Development is not, the development of, development is not indicative of the GDP, because the GDP has the growth of all the corporates of this country is also added on to the GDP. So your GDP will keep growing. But that's not the money that's going to the tribals of this country. That's not the money that's coming to you and me. So the thing is that there is gross inequality in this country. And when we talk about development, we should talk about development of marginalized communities, whether it's Dalits or tribals in this country, whose the only way to develop them would be to let them have their resources. Like, how can you develop if you're thrown out of your house? You don't have a house, you don't have a roof above your head, and then where is your development? So, it's a big thing, because, I keep thinking about this when I go to Mahan. It's like, you're displaced, and then there is no, like, you're fighting against this wall, which is like, oh, people are coming to develop you. That's why the people of Mahan said, हमको नहीं चाहिए आपका विकास, नहीं करना हमको ये सब विकास. So the company comes and tells them, do you want to keep, your children in the forest? For me, development, sensitivity, sustainability has got very different meanings, because I was a middle class person who was born and brought up in the urban areas, and I reached Mahan. Now I'm de-learning all the things that I learned about development, about culture, about living, together with tribals and all of this. Because I remember once going to Mahan, into one of these villages, and there was so Mahan has lots of sloth bears, and there's a village called Budher, and it's in the core of the mine, and it's in the middle of the forest. And there, I went there, and that was initial, so I was just scoping and researching and trying to understand and all of that. There was no fight per se there then. And the forest, ranger and few deputy ranger had come down, and he was asking the Khairwars, in that village to sign some form in which he could give compensation, because sloth bears had destroyed corn crops, in that village. And he was like, if you give something in writing, we'll give you a compensation for, wildlife having destroyed your crops, because the forest department is entitled, they can give these compensation. They were waiting for that village headman, the Khairwar Mukhya, to come down and say. And this Mukhya came and he said, no, we don't want any compensation. And the forest department people continued to say, it's your right, fill this form, take it, you will get money, hum aapko denge. He said, nahi chahiye paisa, And then the forest department people finally got tired and they just went off. Then I was sitting there and I asked them, but the sloth bears have destroyed your crop. Why didn't you just take the compensation? Because, we city people are like so much into, oh, this right has been violated, I need compensation for that. That has happened, so it's always in your system, that if there is a violation, there has to be, uski bharpai honi chahiye. So they said, this person said, that we don't want compensation because, not me, but ages ago, my forefathers encroached into this forest. This was their home. He said, ye unka ghar tha. This was their home. We encroached and we started cultivating and staying here. Today we cultivate enough. Let them also have and we'll also have. So the thing is, as somebody who goes from here, you can never, like for me, development is attaining that form of, will we be able to coexist with nature like that? Wherein we are so coexistent that you really feel that it is the sloth bear's right to come and destroy my hard-earned crop. So they live at a totally different plane. And then we talk about mainstreaming tribals in this country. We talk about, development. When our own concepts of development, our own understanding of, development is so flawed, actually. So every day is a new learning for us in Mahan.
Next question. Any more questions? Right, Nishta. Use the mic, please.
Thank you for your talk, ma'am. Ma'am, my question was, you spoke about how the SR police station was within it. So within that, if the state machinery is so with the corporate, right? How effective is, say, that move that Jayanti Natarajan says that she was under pressure? I mean, how effective is, say, a person in the ministry saying that she was under pressure, or someone like, someone in the ministry saying no, but at the end of the day, it's not really effective. So my question was, how effective is lobbying to say state machinery to get something done? I mean, seeing the ground reality.
Yeah, it is. Lobbying is supposed to be the bad word with all the Neera Radia tapes and stuff out there. But yeah, I think there is a value in advocacy. There is a value in going and telling people the other point of view. Because I remember that while yes, we've never had a appointment to meet the Ministry of Environment and Forests, on the Mahan issue. But the Tribal Affairs Ministry was like, maybe because we kept on knocking their door, they gave us one appointment to meet them and they were like, okay, let's talk to them and get over with them or something like that. But when we gave them all this evidence, yes, it did take us a year, because the minister was like, but there's that, so we got them death certificates, we got them all kinds of evidence. But at the end of that year, there was one person who was convinced, who was a minister of the cabinet rank, who was convinced that forgery had happened and it's wrong. And if at all, the basic minimum is at least have a fresh Gram Sabha there, and he felt compelled enough by his, his inner voice or his morality or whatever within him that pushed him to write a letter to both the chief minister. So you will find that sometimes this advocacy does work, sometimes it doesn't work. But it's when you campaign, you use multiple, tactics or, multiple things to kind of influence. Advocacy definitely is a tool. It has its positives, it has its negatives, but it's always good to try it. Like legal strategy alone, for example, you should not put all your eggs in the same basket, right? So if you just say that, okay, I'm going to challenge this in the legal courts, but then sometimes the courts rule against people. The Narmada Bachao Andolan was totally about, the court ruling, and people had so much high hopes on the fact that, the court ruling will be in favor of the people. But then the court said rehabilitation. Yes, it has a lot of positives. For the first time in this country, we spoke about rehabilitation for huge large scale development. Big dams became a no-no forever, in terms of there's an international debate raked up, all that. So when you talk about these issues, whether it's at legal forums or in advocacy, there are both positives and negatives. Not every time do you actually win the argument, but I think even if you don't win the argument, it's worthwhile having those discussions and those debates, even if it's just having it with one person or two people or a group, because it gives the other point of view, because not every day does the Mahan point of view or the tribal point of view get put forth, in any debate. So it's always worth it, I feel.
Ma'am, I partially agree with you and I partially disagree. Ma'am, I think land being acquired for, especially land of tribals and non-tribals also, being acquired for infrastructure projects or natural resource exploitation is something which is inevitable. It will happen. But as I see it, the issue is about striking a balance. Like, unfortunately in India we have a tribal affairs ministry which is completely defunct. We don't know what happens about tribals. So the issue is more about making the government responsible for the actions. Like, the government should, in fact, take out a policy to make sure that at the same time infrastructure is also there, but the rights of these tribals are not prejudiced, because issues of infrastructure are bound to arise.
Hi, Prashant, could you have the question, please?
That was a comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there has to be a balance, but I also believe that, infrastructure is very, very little. Land is acquired in this country in the name of roads or railway lines is very, very minuscule as compared to huge land being acquired in this country in the name of industry, and there are two different things, So yes, there has to be a balance, and my basic issue is like, these are all finite resources. Land is finite, right? It will finish. Where? So, like, I remember when we were doing, when I went into Singrauli, there was this doctor who's been working in the Singrauli hospital, RB Singh. For 22 years, he's been practicing there. He's a surgeon, come physician, come, pathologist. He's everything all, bundled into one. Very interesting person. He was like, oh, you Greenpeace people, you are against coal mining. I am not against coal mining. That's the first thing he told me. And I was like, I totally understand, sir. That's your prerogative. But then when he started talking about impacts of coal mining, he was so vocal and he was saying that, see, I have nothing against coal mining, but if the government wants to mine this entire district, why do they keep people here? Remove people from this district, just keep this district for mines. He was like, mine kare na, but logo ko kyun yahan pe rakh ke maar rahe hain? As a doctor, I am bothered about health and I know for sure what is the impact of this coal mining on the health of these people. So I am bothered about the health of these people. So where do we draw the balance? You know, it's a very difficult question. But as I say, as you said, yes, there needs to be a balance. We are also not saying, okay, tomorrow come and shut down each and every coal, powered, power plant in this country. No. But what we are saying is when today you are investing in a technology that will go redundant in the next few years, you're locking yourself into a dirty technology which will need you to feed it with coal for the next 42. The average age of a thermal power plant is 42 to 45 years. Now with supercritical technology and stuff, it can go beyond that. But when today I am saying that India's energy paradigm will have a mainstay on coal, then I am locking myself into this dirty technology by investing in this technology, subsidizing in this technology for the next 45 years. Where there could be big changes, right? Renewables could come in a big way tomorrow. What will you do with all of this? So, and this is public money, right? How does the government give subsidies? It's the taxpayers' money that you're subsidizing with. So, why should the taxpayers' money be invested in dirty technology that's going to destroy the environment, take away people's rights? So, what we are saying is, we are not saying shut down every thermal power plant now. No, but have a plan to phase it out. You continue to see all these ill effects and you continue to say we will double the, coal, capacity of this region, we'll double the capacity of energy production from coal in this country. Where are you going? And none of this is sustainable. This planet itself is not going to sustain itself at this. So there are larger issues. Consumerism, the way the urban class lives its life. We all know. Can we live like the US, like the European countries? Will we ever be able to produce energy at that scale and live like that? No, you cannot. That's not sustainable. It's going to end. It's going to end in some years or decades time. This is going to end. So where will you find that kind of energy? Where will you get it from? Coal is finite. Nuclear, uranium is finite resource, right? So why are you basing yourself on methods that are not sustainable in the long run? We don't have another planet to go to, at least not yet. So we have to live on this planet. We have to save this for us and our future generations. So there definitely needs to a balance, and a balance, I think right now the balance is totally skewed against the planet, against the environment, against communities.